it down. We're not shutting it down. We don't want it to shut down because we have the greatest period of time ever. I told you, we have $17 trillion being invested, so the last person who wants it shut down is us now.
How come US is locked in a deadlock? Can a superpower like US run out of money? Can politics lead to a shutdown in a nation? And why this can never happen in India? US is facing a shutdown. Offices are closed, federal employees are at home, and economy is slowing down. But this is not just an American problem. This is going to be the whole world's problem very soon. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and today we are going to understand that what exactly is happening in US. Also with very special emphasis that why this cannot happen in India and it has not happened in India, and then we will understand that what implications that it would have especially on the global economy. So let us start with understanding that what exactly is happening in US. When we are talking about any country that is running and a government which is placed in that country, it needs certain amount of funds that are required to run the whole system of the government, correct? Now, the funds that are given to that government, that definitely comes from the taxes of the people, but how it will be spent, it is decided in different ways in different governments and political setups and polity setups. So when we are talking about polity setups, when we talk about US, it has a democracy which is a presidential system, or you can say a presidential democracy. When we talk about India, it is different from that, but we will come on to that later. But why this shutdown has occurred, let us understand that. Now, when we are talking about the presidential democracy in US, in its Senate, it has total 100 seats. So, if an appropriation has to be passed through the Senate, which has 100 seats, it would need a majority. There are cases where it goes for super majority of 60 votes, but in this cases, at least 51 votes, simple majority for the appropriation. In US, we have presidential democracy. So when we are talking about presidential system of US, you have to understand that how they get their funds for the government. So in this scenario, the Senate passes the appropriation. And in this scenario, they need a super majority. तो अगर funds को यहाँ पे available करवाना है, तो appropriation के through ही pass होंगे और Senate से ही pass होंगे. In this case, they need a super majority of 60 votes. Now, if we talk about Senate itself, it has Republicans and Democrats. यहाँ पर US President Donald Trump Republican Party से हैं, जिसके पास इस वक्त 53 seats ही हैं. And they are falling short of the super majority that they need to pass the appropriation. Now, because यहाँ पे appropriation pass नहीं हो रहा, as per their own constitution, there will be a proper shutdown that will take place. That means federal employees will not be working. The basic essential needs and the basic essential services, they will go on, but there will be no provision of salaries, or the salaries could be delayed. So, if the majority, or if there is no decision that has come out by October 1, the whole system goes into a shutdown. Now, this is exactly what has happened. In this case, President cannot do anything about the Senate's decision. But when we talk about India, why it cannot ever happen in India? In India, we have a parliamentary form of democracy. Whenever we are talking about appropriation, or when we are talking about union budget, that is passed by the parliament, by the both of the houses. And if there is a scenario where it has not been passed, or it might take a little while, or if there is exceptional year where there are general elections, that means the government might change, just like we saw in 2019, we have a provision of vote of account. That means this is a temporary arrangement that the funds will be withdrawn from the Consolidated Fund of India to keep the government running, to keep the system running. So in this situation, India has never seen a situation like shutdown that we are seeing in US, and in future also, because we have the provision of vote of account, we are not going to see one. In US, the occurrences of shutdown is quite frequent. It has occurred in 2025 and it had occurred 7 years before as well. So when we are talking about appropriation bills, which are 12 in number, they need to be passed by October 1. If there is no final say on that, then automatically the funds are locked and the system goes into a deadlock. Now let us understand that what this deadlock actually means and how this began. When we are talking about both party stands, the Republican Party, the main contention point was the Republican Party wanted that the existing funding should be allowed till a given date, and the discussion or the debate can take place later. But when we are talking about the other side, that is the Democrat, they wanted that the healthcare services and the healthcare subsidies, especially for low income households, they should be extended. And there were some Medicaid cuts which were made in Big Beautiful Bill. If you want to understand in detail about the Big Beautiful Bill, you can watch it in this given particular video. And they also want, the Democrats also want that the fiscal powers Donald Trump has, they should be limited. And that is why they were on the other side, that we will not agree. Republican Party was only falling short of 8 votes to get this 12 appropriation bills finalized, but because of different stance, there was no proper agreement and Congress missed the funding line. In this scenario, the moment the funding line was missed, by 12 AM on October 1, the shutdown started. Now, what will happen when shutdown is there? So basically, when we are talking about a government shutdown, the first impact would be seen on government employees. So a lot of employees will be furloughed. What is furloughed? Basically, they would be put on temporary leave. So this leave is basically unpaid. So what is the number of employees which are being furloughed? It is more than 750,000 employees, federal employees, which are not going to work. Basic necessities or basic sectors such as healthcare, military might go ahead, but their cost or their salaries would be very much delayed. When we are talking about citizens, basic social security, Medicare, Medicaid, that will continue because that has permanent funding, that does not need new funding. But the problem would be with new registrations or any claims which would be made, they would be delayed. There will be a lot of problem there. For example, landmarks, museum, national parks, all of them would be shut down, which will also be impacting the tourism. That means the whole country's economy will also be impacted. Apart from this, we might see travel disruption also, because the airport and other transportation departments might see protest because of the delayed payments. So it will have a certain amount of impact on the overall economy immediately, and gradually it will also deepen. And that is what will be reflected broadly on the economy, because productivity will dip. There will be no new economic data will be released. Many countries depend on US's monetary policy and their framework to determine their own, that will be affected. So when we are talking about 2018-19 shutdown which happened, there was $3 billion permanently lost because of that shutdown. If we are talking about in terms of output, this number was almost $11 billion which was lost for US economy. So this is immensely huge, and furthermore, you have to understand this is not as the earlier lockdowns. Further, you have to understand that this is not as same as the last shutdown, because last shutdown, when the employees were given unpaid leaves, they were temporary. This time it is a big question that if the situation is resolved, there is a possibility, because furloughed employees or furloughed workers might not even return, because Donald Trump has introduced Department of Government Efficiency and they are focusing on reducing the permanent workforce. And this will be a great chance for them to bring this in action. Furthermore, there has been a clear indication that the programs which do not have mandatory funding, they will face permanent staff cuts. So what seems like a temporary disruption as of now, this could actually change the size of federal government permanently that we are seeing in US. Now enough about the American problem itself, let's go to the main question कि ये जो situation है ये सिर्फ एक American problem क्यों नहीं है, how come this is a global issue and why world should also look into this, and it is going to be a problematic thing if this is not resolved. The first thing comes from the very fact that US is one of the biggest economy in the world, and if the productivity diminishes there will be effect on the monetary policy, and that will have a ripple effect worldwide. A very good example here is the 2008 crisis that we saw in US and how it got blown out of proportion across the world. Furthermore, when we are talking about shutdown, as I have mentioned, it delays all the economic data. That means there will be a high level of uncertainty for global investors that will lead to a suffrage on the stock markets that is going to increase the demand of gold and silver. That means increasing their prices, and it is also going to affect central banks, including India, because we use US data especially for monetary policy. So if the data is not coming, we are also in an uncertain position as of now. Now, let's just say if this scenario gets extended and if it is not seen that Republicans and Democrats finally come to an agreement and the Congress gets to pass it, there will be reduction in US imports, and US imports a lot of stuff from India, including textiles, pharmas, exports, IT sector. All of this will hit India's sector. And not just talking about India, as the uncertainty increases, we will also find that market will get more and more volatile, which will affect the global trade and which will affect the capital flows as well. So even though this situation is being labeled as temporary, but in this duration a lot can unfold, and we can never trust where on which way President Donald Trump is going ahead and how he's tackling. But it becomes important from the dimensions that how the constitution of both our countries are different, how this shutdown works and how it can impact the global economy, and these global consequences need to be understood very clearly. Now I am going to leave you with a practice question here. You can put down the answers in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.